Greetings, peace and love. My name is Amari, and we're just going to jump right into what would be the third and last part. We're covering the topic of the spirituality of automation. We're laying the foundation. But before we jump into that, definitely want to bring your attention to the shirt. Click the love button. It's all about love over here, as I've explained multiple times already. But the importance of this shirt, it goes a long way in enabling me to give you more of this amazing content. If you haven't figured out by now, I'm quite the personality with the sense of humor, and you're just scratching the surface. I mean, really, you're just scratching the surface, okay? We haven't even really gotten into the deeper layers. Like Shrek, there are many layers to the onion. So let's jump into the spirituality of automation. Before I do that, though, I want to just add, I want to do our first addendum to the last segment of this episode. The addendum is, I have two addendums to make, and I want to make sure I get them expressed just right for you. So, in the last segment, we talked about the actual video that you're watching right now and how there's no messaging right behind me. We got into the colors that you're seeing. The only messaging you should be seeing is click the love button, right? And of course, there's a button. I wanted to add an addendum stating that there's no messaging on the outer portions of the video itself. Now, the platform that you're watching this video on might have their own ads, messaging, and things of that nature at different places. That has nothing to do with me, of course. In some circumstances, it does, because if you click the ad, I might gain something from it. But as I'm creating this video right now, there's no messaging on the outer rim of this video. So if you see something crazy there, please, by all means, I hope you watch this. Hope you watch the last segment of this episode and you watch the intros of this particular segment so that you got a clear idea. That's that addendum. You just experienced for the first time an addendum. And there's going to be many more addendums, I'm pretty sure. Well, I'll be adding to what I've already said in the last video somewhere. The second addendum is this. I talked about things I don't say and don't do as well in terms of professionalism. One of the characteristics that I take with me to all of my clients in the past, in the current, and in the future. If you're my client, you're going to get the highest level of professionalism. And what that also means is that there will be, just like a taxi driver and a taxi driver's rider, the driver rider confidentiality. Then you have the therapist patient confidentiality. I also, legally, most of the times, sign paperwork that prevents me from divulging. But just on principle alone, I carry the trust everywhere I go to not divulge my client's information to anyone, sometimes not even my client. Because inside my client has different levels, people operate at different levels. So I may be in a company of the CEO, the COO one day, and then VPs the next day, and they're entrusting me to not reveal certain things to any layer of their company many times about decisions they plan on making. Same thing with my relationships with HR and different other entities in corporate America that perform HR related activities, including agencies. This legal paperwork that I've signed, not to divulge within a certain time frame, but just on principle, even outside of that time frame, I operate on a principle that there's a trust between me and my clients that I would never break, never break. So I take that. I'm very passionate about that. So I operate when we talk about my experiences. I can give you granular stories. I can give you details. I can give you certain types of excitement because I don't need the client's business structure. I don't need anything about the client to tell you the story. I call that interview level content, interview level. So if I were to go for a job interview, which I've had in the past, and I'm talking to 6 or 7 people at one time in that interview. Yes, I've been in that situation where we're in a conference room and all of the people that are screening me, 6 or 7 of them, sometimes even more, are present around that conference table, taking turns asking me questions. I've been through that and walked out with the job offer. So imagine that. I'm just trying to give you guys a perspective of where love can take you if applied the right way and with the right person and with the right energy. I was in those scenarios, right? Hearing things that weren't for the ears, definitely weren't for the public ears, and weren't for even people inside the organization's ears, and having to be like, man, the level of trust that they have for me, it's profound. The fact that they even let me be in that space. And I've been tested many times to see if I would break the trust. So I could not have gotten to the levels that I've achieved to even be the founder and creator of Phrase Keywords without that trust. Obviously, the greatest trust would be an example of that would be the VPs. We're not even at the COO and CEO levels, just the VPs putting their jobs on the line, giving me 100% autonomy to implement Phrase Keywords. The passion that I brought to that client, implement it. Yes, right? They see the results. Yes. Trained their team up. Yes. Got the phone call. Yes. Omari created these bots. These bots are amazing. Look at what they can do. He trained us up in it, and we're ready to pass them on to you for a slight increase, of course. But it's a great feeling when you create bots. And that's really where the spiritual, see, that feeling of creating a bot for the first time and watching your bot do what it's supposed to do and not do, it does one thing and it doesn't do all this other stuff that it could do. It's very focused, which reduces the obvious risk, and it has no knowledge of what a delete is. It doesn't even know how to delete data. And if something goes wrong in the bot, it cannot fix itself. It has to call me, otherwise I'd be out of a job. But you're talking about a program operating with the information that it has, that I've created it with, to go to a specific place in the app or website, enter in this very specific data, and compare and check to see if everything went as smooth as it should. Or if not, alert me right away and let me know so I can escalate it as the automation engineer. There's a whole group of people that I can escalate it to. I can escalate it to my automation testers, right? Who may know that specific feature better than I do. I can escalate it to the lead. If I'm not the lead, I can escalate it to the manager. If I am the lead, right? I can escalate it to the development team myself and say, hey, we've got an issue here. I've checked it many times. It needs to be fixed. So there's so many ways to escalate it. But nevertheless, it gets escalated and it gets fixed. My bots are serving a very important purpose, very valuable to the company. That's why the company's willing to pay so much for the, a 6-figure salary for the automation engineer. Have a whole team of automation engineers. You just do the math. You just do the multiplication. This company could easily be spending $20 million just staffing a testing project. We didn't even get to the development team. When you talk about the tools, okay, maybe not $20 million. That's a huge team. But a modest team easily, if you talk about 6-figure incomes, you're gonna talk about a 10-person team, that's well over $1 million just for the testers alone, assuming each one was banking, securing the bag, right? I'm being a little generous, but I'm just trying to paint a picture here that the company values its bots and the work that I do, laying that architecture, that approach, that foundation, using phrase keywords approach, of course. That gives the bots an amazing chance to succeed. The accelerator, why not? But there's a spiritual component to creating these bots, and this is the point that I'm trying to get to. As I'm creating these bots and watching them do what they do and feeling the joy that my creation has done, then securing the bag with it, then going and flying over here and taking a vacation, my bots did that. So over time, as I'm maintaining this bot collective, this bot community, subconsciously I'm developing a friendship in a weird sort of way. A dependency is there, obviously, and I'm protective of these bots, so protective. I got them in all types of, there's all types of layers of protection and all types of layers of redundancy. The data is redundant. So if the database goes down and my bots depend upon, I have another backup database. That backup is saved ever so often, preferably every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Okay, so there's robot capabilities. If something goes wrong with the data, I can roll back to yesterday's data. That data is distributed across different locations in the cloud, in the internet network. So even if that facility goes down, we got a backup copy of the data in another facility on the other side of the flat or globe Earth. Oh my gosh, you're not gonna figure it out, are you? Not in this episode. Then the scripts, the bots themselves. Oh, that's just precious code. Again, redundancy. I make copies upon copies, and then I got the copies in another environment where we store our development code. Keep that safe. Usually a change management tool that has what would be user access rights and permissions, only allowing those who are in a specific group permission to make any types of edit, sometimes view, but specifically changing. You have to be in, you have to have access granted to be able to touch my scripts. Are you kidding me? You think any of your body in the company can touch my scripts? No, no, no. The development team uses these technologies and they extend 99.99% of the time. They extend that technology to the automation engineers as well. They give us our own environment to keep our data and our spots safe 100% of the time. And this environment is then redundant, backed up at different physical locations, preferably. Now, if you're just a lone developer like I am, working remote for yourself, selling amazing t-shirts, click the love button, by the way, then you're using tools that give you access via the cloud to back up, to save. And so any client that I deal with is going to have, there's going to be two layers more than likely. They're going to have their own backups, which I'm 100% fine with. And I'm going to have backups of what I create. So even if your network was to go down and you said, Omari, I need you to run a production test right away, run the entire suite. I need to know what's broken in the live site because we've had an issue over here with our servers all day. I can run the scripts from my location and make certain validations in very quickly, even on the call that we're on. Just in real time, I can kick them off. My infrastructure is set up so that I can just reach out, like it says in the scripture. I can just reach out in the garden and eat any fruit that I like. I can grab any script that I like in real time. My engines are always running, so to speak, assuming that I'm even in front of the computer, like I'm not on a kayak somewhere or, you know, out there doing some amazing field grader stunts, shooting some amazing field grader videos. So assuming I'm actually on site, otherwise I'll have someone that could be in a represent me in my absence to perform that for me, which really is just a matter of drag and drop. Like literally, like grabbing fruits in the garden of bliss, right, left hand, it doesn't matter. You can just reach out, grab the suite of scripts, drop it in the right location, and we'll start running your script for you. We'll have the feedback right away as the scripts are completing. So those scripts, those bots that I create, heavy protection all times, especially my clients' bots. And as a protector, you start to develop spiritually some sort of connection to these bots. You're their creator. And you start to take the perspective of a creator. And it then begins to flip on you. Like, whoa, I wonder how my creator, God, by whichever name you may call God, notice I didn't say your God. I just said by whichever name you may call God, whether you believe in him or not. If you don't believe in God, then you may call him nothingness. That doesn't change the fact that God is still there. Just like if you call me something else, like I'm clearly an African American male that is going on 50 years old. If you haven't noticed, I'll be I'll be 50 this year, 2024, November 7th, 2024. 50. Woo! Unbelievable. Now that's going to be a feel greater moment, right? Most certainly. I got to take a sip of water to that. My goodness. Mm-mm-mm. By the way, that was some phrase keywords ASMR there. That's Apple, Sam, Mariam, Roger. That's ASMR. Let's give you a little bit more. You ready? Now that you know what it is. So as these bots protector, a relationship is formed just from that desire to protect. But then there's a upgrade that I need to make. I'm making them smarter incrementally, and I begin to think of myself as that creator of the bots, which forces me to then think to myself, how is my creator, God? Many call God Allah, Elohim, Jehovah, Yahweh. So many. Every culture, every language has its own word for God. Actually, the word God to me is more of a pronoun than a name. So instead of saying he, sometimes I just say God. Whereas the actual name depends upon your spiritual truths. And again, if you don't believe that there is a God, you will just call that God nothingness or nothing. But that's still a name that you're calling it. It's interesting because it, if you refer to God as it, people say, well, you have to give it a he or. But from my perspective, giving it a he or a she brings gender into it. And from my perspective, I perceive God as beyond, transcendent of gender. So if I use the word he or she, then I'm just really personifying intentionally to connect to you, the listener, because I know that's the word you use. But in my own mind, I don't ascribe those words to God because God would transcend gender itself. God would be the creator of gender, meaning, like even love, God is the creator of love, but God is also emanating love because that is God's intent to emanate love through me and through you. And this is why I can say, starting with my love for God and God's love for me, I can love humanity and I can love you and you can love me and we can click the love button. So that perspective of creator of the bots begins to take a reverse role. Its trajectory starts to go inward, and I begin to imagine in my own imagination how God might see me and might create creation itself. And so what began to happen with me is that it made me want to make my bots even better. Because when you start to think from the perspective of a creator, that creative energy is curious energy, and it's always asking the question, especially in me, how can I make this better so that it doesn't fail? You know, it doesn't do what it's not supposed to do. How can I make this bot so that it executes more reliably? It does what it's supposed to do even better? And how can I then create a best practice? How can I take this capacity, this characteristic, and then spread it across all my other bots with minimal work? Well, there is a way to do that depending upon which language you're using. And this way, in my mind, I would start to take that trajectory and start to think about the different languages and their capabilities. And object oriented programming, for example, would allow me to create an object of bot. In that object, I could just use it as an empty wrapper. I could do 2 plus 2 in the beginning, for example, and the bot would just spit out 4. But if I just create that object and then through the process of inheritance create another object, I've added a layer on top of that called bot. Like let's say I call the first layer bot mind, and then I can create a second layer and I'll call that bot body, right? Bot body encapsulates bot mind. Now I begin to think like, wow, I wonder if the creator built me this way, because it just makes logical sense. So now I have bot mind inside of bot body, right? One is inside the other. Now I can build. Let's say I build my bot to go to Operation Smile's website and enter a row of data. Maybe that data it's not a lot of data, it's just contact information, phone numbers, first name, address, phone numbers, date of birth, that type of information, male or female, gender, whatever, It's a person, and my bot's going and entering that data one row at a time. Well, I just need to drink. I'm getting too technical, but I have to get a little technical to kind of like give you context. You know what I mean? A little ASMR too doesn't hurt. When I create this bot to go to Operation Smile and to do that, let's say in the future I decide, you know what? I want to give this bot, I want to make this bot more intelligent. And I already have 1,000 bots already out there in the collective, in the bot community. I want to make them all intelligent at one time. I want to take them from here to here, the next level of intelligence. I want to build something inside of the bot mind that will automatically be inherited by all the bots out there. It could even be a security feature. I need all of these bots to not do something or to check something before they do XYZ. Just make sure, authenticate first, right? It could be a requirement coming from my client. I need all your bots to authenticate through this one sign-on process before they actually execute their work. So if I didn't structure it this way, I would have to go to each bot, each call them in like I would do in a meeting or interview, look at what is there, and then build what my client needs me to build one at a time, and that could take a long time, especially with a large collective. But because I structured it using object-oriented programming, and I have as the first object the lowest level object in that hierarchy of objects that I built on top of, the lowest level is the bot mind. I can just go into that bot mind code, add the security layer there. And any bot, once I save it, check that code in, it propagates to the layer where all the bots live. Like I inject that code into their community. Every bot from that point forward will now be at that new level of intelligence. They will all inherit what would be the behavior that I programmed, the new logic that I placed in the bot mind. I hope that makes sense. So in the beginning, I would be thinking, well, I want this capability, so it only makes sense to use object-oriented programming languages because that gives me the best approach to pulling this off. Now, I could obviously do this in other ways in other languages. And another factor that might go into this is, okay, object-oriented programming languages add obviously an additional layer of complexity. You can do more things with them. But I'd factor in, okay, how popular is this language? If something happens to me, for example, I have to, put a fire out, an emergency takes place, and I have to go deal with something. But I also have clients that might need me to make an adjustment to something, just something small, you know, or something like we need this bot to do or adapt to this, like a new security protocol. I want to use a language that I can pick up the phone and say, hey, man, I need you to tweak this code for me. It's in the language you already know. It's object-oriented programming, like, like Java, for example. And the more popular the language, the more people I can literally pick up the phone and call. Hey, I give you XYZ amount of, dollars amount of money, and if you could get it to me in a certain amount of time to meet this service level agreement, here's the SOW. I need your company to sign this right away. Get this done for my client. So I may go and set up a relationship with a third party to get the work done in that case. And it helps if that party already knows the language, because it's just more people I can shop it to get the best price for my client. Because at the end of the day, it's my client that's going to pay for that. So I want to make sure I write and use a language that is portable to as many people as possible. So that's how languages become popular and stay popular. Of course, the more people that know the language, there's a drop in the actual pay for that language. In the beginning, when a language is introduced and few people know it, the demand is obviously higher, and people are willing to pay bucos of dollars in the beginning. But then more people learn it, it goes down a little bit, and that's to be expected. So the creation of a bot, it then becomes this very thoughtful experience for the developer, for the creator of the bot. And from that point forward, a connection is formed with that bot. And you want to see that bot succeed. And that really helped me really grasp how God sees me. And that's when it really became spiritual for me, because it was like, wow, if I can see my bot this way, somebody else might come up to this and say, oh, Mario, you're just overdoing it. It's just a bot. It's just a program, it's using a tool your client paid for. No, the fact that I'm able to see my bot this way and have that connection to the bot and protect it and upgrade it, I got to see, wow, this is probably how God would see me, his creation, God's creation. And again, it doesn't matter what word you use for God, but how God would see me, how the all knowing, when that God created me in the very beginning, whatever you want to call it, the Big Bang, whatever, start of the simulation, whatever thought went into creating me, just because there's so many copies of me in the multiverse, potentially, as a lot of my Marvel movies will show me, especially in Doctor Strange, there were so many copies, right? As many permutations as there may be of me, God could have that connection to me the same way I may have a connection to a bot out of hundreds and thousands of bots, you know. And so I can't allow the quantity to devalue the quality, and the quality of that relationship that I have with my bots. And then that's when it got spiritual for me. Once I became aware of that, and I think I became aware of it because there was an incident where I didn't have access to the bots that I had created for my client. And I was literally going through like a certain type of anxiety. And it was just like I'm pacing, like literally, like this anxiety of wondering, will I have to create my bot army from scratch all over again? But then there's the anxiety of just, will I create them as great again? Or will I just be like under pressure having to recreate it, trying to meet this deadline? They're not going to be bots at the same level of these bots that I just created. That I had the time to put the thought, creative energy into these bots. Like I really felt like I had lost a family member. It was just deep for me, and it was profound. It was like, I was literally like breaking down, like, whoa. So when it became spiritual for me, and I realized that there was a connection between me, the creator of these bots, and the bots themselves, then I was able to reverse, and then, reverse the direction of the eye and look inward and see that that's truly how God could be viewing me. And that would explain why I feel a connection to God, and why the work that I do is driven by my connection to God. And again, how you see God and I see God might be totally different. I'm just using the pronoun. This, but the actual view, I would have to explain in greater detail in another. We're gonna get into that as we work through certain, levels of automation. It's gonna be revealed. I'm not gonna be like this boring guy that's just constantly, talking about one particular thing. We're gonna mix it all up. The spirituality is a part of the automation. So now that the foundation is laid, you don't have to be expecting anything else. This is exactly what it is, what it will be. And God is here with us, taking this journey. Before I go, let me just make sure there's nothing else I wanted to cover. It's looking pretty good. I feel like I covered just about everything in that one. And the same would be true. Let's see. We covered the screen. Yep, yep. And we're going to talk about morality next. I mentioned some phrases in the last episode about morality, and it's simple. We don't do that here. We don't. You saw that, right? Wakanda. That's the context. If you haven't seen Black Panther and the popular meme where it's like, we don't do that here. We certain things we just don't do that here, and I'll context that. We don't do that anymore. You feel me? I've evolved and I've grown up, especially with my awareness of God and the scripture, and the fact that the scripture made me aware that God sees all that we do, all that I do. Just like I see my bots doing what they're supposed to be doing, God has a similar view on me. And so I truly believe that. So when I became aware of that, like, whoa, I'm disappointing my creator with these, ridiculous thoughts and acts. I really wanted to become a better creation. And imagine if one of my bots had that ability to think to itself, I wonder if I'm the best bot I could be. But, in my case, that's exactly what happened. So we don't do that anymore, okay? And finally, my favorite, we stopped doing that a long, long time ago, okay? A lot of time has passed since we did that. So we're gonna touch on morality in the next episode. I hope that I covered, like I feel like I covered. I've laid the foundation for the spirituality of automation. I mentioned in the last segment that of this episode that yes, that was a correction. The last segment of this episode, the one right before this, I mentioned a few things about um, my relationship with what was it? Let's see. Um, yeah, so my relationship with clients in the past who I'm aware of their practices, but I don't divulge any information about them, even if it didn't end well, because I take very seriously what would be the automation engineer, lead architect confidentiality agreement with the client. And that's true for past, present, and future clients. So if you ever see a video of me in the future, everything looks the same, but that type of information spewing from that character's mouth, know that that is not me. It violates every level of professionalism that I hold with the highest level of integrity. I will not divulge your information. And with that said, remember, I'll close on this note. You know what it's gonna be. Click the love button. Make sure you go to the site. I'm going to show you where to go. It's real simple. You're going to go to phrasekeywords.com. There's a hyphen between phrase and keywords, phrasekeywords.com. Click the shop. I'm not going to click it for you. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Click the shop yourself, and it will take you to the shop where you can get the latest edition of the Click the Love button shirts. Got them in different colors, different sizes, in different color fonts. So we got the white and the red, the black, the white, and the black and the yellow font. There's going to be more coming soon, but I want you to know that I truly, truly, from the bottom of the heart that's beneath this shirt and the heart that's on this actual shirt, truly appreciate you for the support and getting one of these shirts. Let me tell you, I know I'm past the time, but let me tell you, this shirt. See, when we get to the morality part, you're going to understand what I'm saying. But this shirt, as it is right now, I would just walk. True story. I walked into a venue, just people everywhere enjoying and living their best life in a love space. And like this shirt, just people were just walking up to me and like click the love button and went to actually physically touch the button on this shirt. This is why I raised the button up, because when I realized the shirt was that impactful to where people were walking up to me and it was acting as an icebreaker, it was creating laughs. True story. There was a group of very attractive women leaving a venue, and I was just minding my own business. And one of them walked up to me, and then, of course, the group followed. So now three of them are right in my face, and she has the camera going, so there's actually footage of this out there somewhere. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, what are you gonna do when I click the love button?" And she goes and she clicks the love button. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, I had a moment where I actually became an automation bot. Like I went like, and I started walking like that. And I was like, "You click the love button. You click the love button. I am a automation bot coming to give you some love." And I like made the hug gesture, and I was like, and they just fell out dying. Like they were laughing so hard. They caught it on video. And then her friend was like, "I want to catch one on video too." Pulled out her camera and was like, "Okay, take two." Did the whole thing all over again. Of course, this time I did it even better because I had practiced from the first time. Come here. So I like walk like a robot up on her, and she, knowing now her friend's holding the camera, she like allowed me to then, and she gave me a hug, and it was a complete mood changer for both of us. For me, it was just like, wow, I can't believe this shirt was that impactful. Click the love button. It just sounds like just such a simple phrase, keyword, but when I put love in that bracket, in between those two brackets there, the impact is just so profound. And that memory that she has recorded, as well as the one in their minds, that memory that they have is just going to last, hopefully, for the rest of their life and be a mood changer going forward. Finally, let me say this. I don't want anyone to be confused about the creator metaphor. When you're put in a position where you can create something, then you'll overstand that metaphor. People who don't overstand that metaphor have never been in a creator's chair, so to speak. And by create, I don't mean like the settings in the video game. I mean creating the video game, creating the solution, creating the spreadsheet, building it with the right formulas, doing the mental work to create the formulas itself. If I begin to tell you the amazing types of creativity that I've experienced just with spreadsheets alone, it would blow your mind. That's a whole hour, and it would just sound like I'm bragging on myself. But I'm not. I'm centered. I'm balanced. I can tell you a good story about something that happened through me or something that I found that without it being about me. God gets all the glory. So without the Lord, I'm nothing in this space of creativity. And then following the laws in the scripture, it just allows my creativity to run even wilder because I'm in a safe space called the law of God. And again, it doesn't matter. really, to me, what you call the law of God or even what you call God. What matters is that you're standardized, you've fixed yourself, you've anchored yourself to something that is beneficial for your creativity to run wild. And then when you allow your creativity to play in that playground where it's safe, then it can begin to blossom. Thinking outside of the box can occur, and fresh ideas will then formulate that you can then manifest into your own reality. That's what happened to me. I hope that's what happens to you. But I feel like in our connection, I'm giving you the energy, but I need you to do your part. I need you to click the love button. Go get that shirt. It's unisex. It comes in many sizes, a variety of colors. And I want to thank you from the bottom of both my hearts, the one inside my body and the one on my shirt. I want to thank you for your support. It goes a long way in helping me produce more amazing content like this. I went a little bit over because this is the last episode. I want to make sure, excuse me, this is the last segment of the episode 7 where we talk about the spirituality of automation. I just wanted to make sure I covered everything so I can really get to the morality layer in the next episode. Now, I mentioned in the very beginning, this is where we bring it back full circle. I mentioned in the very beginning that there were three aspects to the spirituality of automation. And we just talked on the creator aspect of it. And as a creator of these bots, how they would perceive me as their creator, and then I would have to correct them and say, well, I'm not the creator. I'm just your creator, but there's levels to this. I'm not the creator, but yeah, you're right. With the help of the creator and the guidance, I created you, the bot. And it's important to me. I feel a connection to you, which ultimately I believe is the same connection that God feels to me. Excuse me. But there's a couple other aspects to the spirituality topic that I want to make sure that I at least mention before we leave this particular segment. Okay. So the second one is the automation itself. When the automation bot runs, it does a lot of amazing things at the computer and at the website level. The first thing it does, oftentimes, it does some sort of cleanup and initialization process before it even runs. These are things that it's doing behind the scenes. This could be like making sure that there there there's not any leftover data from the last bot. So imagine if you're a bot and you're coming into a scene and you want to make sure, right? There was a bot there before you. You want to make sure that everything is reset to the right settings and everything before you even come in here to do your job. So we call that initialization. And then the bot launches what would be the application or the browser, like Google Chrome, for example. Or if it's testing a mobile app, it would launch that app. So you see that app it just pops up on the screen. The bot does that. It uses programming language to launch that app. So when the bot is actually running, you get to see it doing what it does. Some things you can't visually see, but you can see like in some sort of an output log. If you gave yourself that benefit, then you could look in the output log. Then you can see it do actual stuff. It launches the website. It goes to a particular website, particular page. It clicks navigation bars in the menu. Sometimes the menu is at the top, sometimes it's at the side. Sometimes you have to click an icon to open the menu, right? Boop. Then it clicks the right location, and then it opens that page, and then it starts entering data really fast, and it can then go to another page, enter data, go to another page, enter data. It can do this on multiple pages. It doesn't really matter how many pages there are. Obviously, the more pages there are, the more chances there are for mistakes or uh, the machine itself or the browser itself to make a mistake. Sometimes that happens. The page doesn't refresh properly. But these are all good from an automation perspective because we can make the bots smarter and teach the bots themselves what to do if the page stalls. We can tell it how to trap that error and alert me, the automation engineer. And that way I can come in and learn from it and do something new. So this relationship between watching the bot execute and the automation engineer, excuse me, watching the bot execute, as I'm watching it, I'm having an experience. I'm going through the app. I'm having a journey. I'm going through these pages. I'm looking in real time at what the bot is doing. And finally, the bot gets to the end of its journey where it gets to the final part where it validates something. It produces some type of an output, or it gets to the end. It screen scrapes some data, it writes it into the log, and then it gives me a pass or fail, a success, or something went wrong. I'm rooting for the success most of the time. 99.99% of the time, I'm expecting the success, especially if the bot is entering data. But again, something can go wrong on the website side. The data could get lost because the website went down. So, excluding those types of issues, assuming everything is up and running, the bot should do its job and complete with the pass. But there's something that happens when I'm sitting here watching it. I'm like watching the bot. I'm getting all types of sensations. I'm so happy. I'm just joyful watching. I'm just like in a space of love. I'm watching the bot run. And the more complicated the bot is in the script that is running, the more I'm enjoying it. So when I run like large end-to-end scripts, which usually include, it's like I'm bringing a lot of different bots into one room. I'm saying, okay, bots, I need y'all to run in this order. You stand here, you stand here, you stand here. But at the end of all of you guys doing your different jobs, we're going to complete something called the end-to-end flow. We're going to take this transaction through all of the different stages that it can go through to possibly get to an end state somewhere. And then at the end, we're going to check it and give it a pass or fail. We call those end-to-end scripts. They can take sometimes 30 minutes, 60 minutes to run. It just depends on how many pages it's touching, how long you're on each page, like how complex the data, the operations. And once the end-to-end script is running, that arrangement of bots then becomes like it's a Voltron. It becomes its own like Voltron, pulls out its sword. It's doing its own end-to-end operations. But the crazy part about it is, then like Voltron, it could break apart into its own individual bots and go back to doing what it was doing as an individual bot. So you have to make sure you approach automation a certain way in the beginning to get that type of productivity and efficiency, like form Voltron. All right, break apart again. But we're not dealing with 5 bots here. You could be forming Voltron similar to Iron Man suit. I don't know if you're familiar with Iron Man from Marvel, but Iron Man has this capability where his suit just piece by piece just like it just all comes together, right? In a matter of seconds. And then boom, he's full blown Iron Man capability, right? Avenger mode. So a lot of times that's how the bots come together. And as the automation engineer, lead, or architect, I can have full control over how I want to execute that end to end. I can have a suite of end to ends. You can imagine how many bots that is. Like when I was talking about what I did at one of my clients, I mentioned that we went past 100,000 permutations of automation bots. When I mentioned that, what I did not mention is that these were end to end scripts. These were not the individual bots. These were the Voltrons. Okay. And so I didn't just surpass my expectation fantasy, I eclipsed it. Because my expectation fantasy was like, it didn't have that many digits. Like to get to 100,000 permutations of automation bots, that's just insane. Anybody in the field of automation will tell you. Like imagine you walk into a warehouse and there's 100,000. No, I'm not saying that right, but who cares? But imagine if you had that many bots sitting in the warehouse, or if you had that many bots, if you had that many cell phones, like in one of those cell phones. We'll get into that in the next topic of morality. But imagine you had something like that. That's what I had as automation, permutations of automation bots. Okay, that was the size of my bot army, so to speak. So I take great pride, and when I talk about it, I don't want it to come across like I'm bragging on myself, because to God is all the glory, okay? But when I used to watch those end-to-end scripts run, I could just sit there and have this spiritual experience, and it would just be an overwhelming sense of pride and joy that I have in my bots as they're running. And then it was visually pleasing at the object, at the field level, as it was checking a checkbox, as it was populating a list box, as it was transitioning from one state to another. That entire transaction, it was moving across its transitional states from one state to another. As I watched it do that, it was just like aesthetically pleasing to me. My eyes were feeling tears of joy. It was just like I had to wipe. It was just like, oh my goodness, these tears. I was getting an emotional response from the success of my bots. I think in the simulation terms, I've heard a guy call that on one of those conspiracy media platforms. I think he called that loosh. Like I was getting loosh from my bots. And then I began to think to myself, if I can get loosh from my creation, which is like a sensation of joy that I'm getting from my bots as they're running in real time, it's not that far fetched to think that, God, who's protecting me and helping me and guiding me, is getting some form of loosh from me, even if it's just something as simple as the joy of seeing, God seeing me as God's creation, reaching a potential, a high potential in my journey. The same joy could be considered from a conspiracy theorist language terminology called loosh. Go Google that. It's spelled loosh, Loosh. Wonderful concept, but I again view it from the gift side. I don't see it as a bad thing. I feel like every layer of existence has something to gain from the other layers of existence, and I'm okay with that. One example that I recently learned was how you might have a plant, you might have a flower, and there's a masculine and female presence. There's a branch that's masculine, there's a branch that's feminine, and the masculine has to get the pollen over to the feminine branch. I just recently like had a conversation about this, and it is depending upon this bee, it's depending upon this egg, this insect, to fly to the masculine, get the pollen on itself, and then as it's getting more nectar from the feminine, it drops the pollen off, and that's then how pollination happens. Mind blowing, but really what it's saying to me is like in the very creation, there's this dependency between different species, different layers, and it's okay. So if there's anything that I'm contributing to the universe, contributing to what God has programmed the universe to extract, if that's called loosh, and the loosh is something that I'm just giving off as I do good works, then by all means, I want it to be the most flavorful loosh, the most delightful loosh, in humanity. That would be my feel greater moment. So we're approaching an hour, and I went way over, but I just wanted to make sure I cover that portion of just watching the script flow, and the loosh, the joy, the blessing of just the aesthetically pleasing layer that I experience when I watch my bots do their work. Whether it be the log or just opening websites, it's just an amazing experience. Finally, there's the third aspect, and that is, and I have to mention this because it's a spiritual component here as well, that is adapting to change. The larger my bot collective, the larger my bot community becomes, the harder it is to adapt when changes need to happen in the bots. So I used an example earlier where I mentioned how I use object oriented programming language like Java to build a bot mind, and then allow the bot body to layer itself over the mind. So then when I replicate the body 1,000 times, all of these bodies are still dependent upon that mind code. So when I alter the mind code, it matriculates to all of the bots just that one instance. When I push it out live, like a creator should, it matriculates out. It matriculates outward to all my bots. And so I don't think it's that far fetched to consider that God, my creator, in the creation of the human being used a similar approach, obviously way more advanced. And if that were the case, then it confirmed for me that if God so wanted to, God could have made all human beings the same, identical, could have made us all using the same mind object, the same way my bots have a bot mind. God could have easily created all human beings to be based on this one object prototype. And so if God ever needs to adapt to change, it would be very simple. There's just one prototype, one object, one human being. And let's say that one human being looked like me, was me, and it was just like instead of as they say 8 billion different humans on a planet, it'd just be 8 billion copies of me out there. That would be kind of boring, don't you think? I'm so glad God didn't do that. But to understand the complexity of what God actually did in God's creation, I look at the bots and I realize I have a diverse set of bots. But for my end-to-end scripts, there are maybe only about 2 to 3 end-to-end scripts. And those end-to-end scripts handle a lot of data. Those are some like Voltron type bots. And it takes a long time for them to complete what they're doing, right? So I'm always monitoring them. I'm always paying attention to them, protecting them. They are of high value to the company and definitely to me. Now, when you look at humanity and you apply this pattern of diversity where you see so many different types of humans everywhere, all over the planet, every individual is unique, a unique set of circumstances and a unique person, different fingerprints, different irises in the eye, different textures. Like everybody's unique. If God wants to adapt to change, right, you could argue that we're so unique that going into like how I did with the bots, just going into the bot mind and making a logical change, it just wouldn't be that simple. But nevertheless, it would be easy for God. Because in the first place, I'm saying that God created all of us intentionally to be different. So the love that I have for my bot's diversity, even though it's not as diverse as it could be relative to human beings, I would imagine that that diversity that we see amongst humans is also equally and more loved by God. Therefore, what right do I have to, one, have any lesser love, and two, think I'm better than anybody else? I'm unique, and that's enough for me because I understand and I overstand the complexity of creating this level of uniqueness in every individual person because I've had a hands-on experience adapting to change for my bots. So I understand the complexity just at the bot level. So it gives me perspective on understanding and overstanding the complexity at the real God level as it pertains to all of the different creatures, not just humans, but creatures across the galaxy and then the galaxy itself. Just from an information perspective, that's an overwhelming amount of just data, let alone code. If I'm running off of code and I'm just as unique as I am, I mean, goodness gracious. Now, from an object oriented perspective, I do perceive, thanks to automation and using object oriented programs, that when God says it is easy, it truly is easy if you've constructed every individual human based off a human object layer. So if there's a human object and then the differences are laid on top, then it is in fact easy because all God would have to do at that point, if he wanted to change, if God wanted to change a fundamental aspect of the human, to add more intelligence, to add more empathy, to add more love, right? If God wanted to do that, he could just do it at the human layer. So in the scripture, and I'll close with this, in the scripture, God says, I intentionally made y'all different. I intentionally built y'all on the human object, but created on top of that such a complex layer of uniqueness that when you look at your DNA, you see the uniqueness at the microscopic levels. I intentionally did that as a layer of complexity to my creation because I want you as the human to learn your fellow humans' characteristics and traits, and to not just learn but love. So I hope you get what I'm trying to say. The spiritual, the spirituality of automation, it all comes back to love. And those are the three aspects of my journey, my spiritual journey through automation. And this is how I landed here with click the love button, and there's a love button right there, right? This is how I landed there. Phrase keywords. It went way beyond automation and it got us to the love that God, our creator, wants us as the beautiful creation, the human being, to have for God and to have for each other and to have for our families, to have for our community, to have for our planet, whether you think it's this or this. Love. It's about love. So click the love button. Click the love button. Make sure you go to the shop. I'm gonna show you one last time in case you forgot. You're gonna go to phrasekeywords.com, click on shop. I'm not gonna spoil it for you. If you want to see what it looks like under there, you gotta go watch the intro. Got to go watch the intro. So that's it on the spirituality of automation. We're gonna get into the moral layer of it in the next episode 8. I'm excited about that. We have a lot to cover. And don't worry, we're going to get our hands dirty. We're going to get into some actual automation. We're going to run the phrase keywords automation solution. We're going to design some automation scripts, some bots together. We're going to walk through how they run. And we're just going to, when we get there, because I've laid this foundation, the things that I'm going to say in those episodes will make sense. The clarity will be there. So if you're watching this episode in the right place, in the right flow, then you've done yourself a great service because you understand where I'm coming from as it pertains to the spirituality of automation. So on that note, there's only one thing left for me to say, and that is peace and love. Thank you for rocking with me. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next episode. Remember, click the love button.